Welcome to the Rock's Back Pages podcast. I'm Barney Hoskins, and I'm on a screen with my colleagues Mark Pringle.
Hi, Barney.
And Jasper Mearson. Bowie.
Hello, Barney.
And joining us all the way from Portland, Oregon is Mr. Jimmy McDonough. Welcome, Jimmy.
Well, thank you. Glad to be here, fellas.
Our guest has described himself as the king of the crazy biographers and is best known for his amazing Neil Young biography, Shakey, which was published back in 2002. Since then, he's told the stories of Tammy Wynette and Al Green in his uniquely unsparing fashion. And now he's about to unleash the hair-raising I Am from the Honky Tonks on the world. It's a biography of the doomed country singer Gary Stewart, a Herculean labor of love that finally found a publisher in the form of RBP contributor Chris Campion. Jimmy, we'll get to Gary Stewart a little later in the episode, but let's backtrack to how you came into writing about music in the first place. You grew up in Indiana, I believe. I don't know if you were born there, but I'm pretty sure you grew up.
No, I was born on the East Coast. I was born on the East Coast, and then I moved to Indiana. I tell my friends I'm equal parts Indiana Drive-In and New York City Grindhouse. So yeah, that's how I came into the world.
Oh, that's an unbeatable mix, really, isn't it? That's going to stay with me. I'm not sure I'm going to get over that. Okay, so Indiana from what age?
It was about 11, 12, right in the midst of, it was very hard to leave the East Coast and go hang out with a bunch of farmers, I feared for my life. I thought it would just be like Junior Samples would greet me when I got off the plane. But, and if only he would have, it probably would have changed my life earlier. But I grew to love the Midwest and the South. And yeah.
Yeah. What is it? Is it if I pronounce it right, which I won't, the Hoosier State? Is that it? Is that it called?
Hoosier State.
Hoosier
That's
State.
Right.
That's it. I don't even know what a Hoosier is. Do you, Mark?
No.
Neither do they.
Neither do they. Okay. So when did you move, as it were, back to New York, and what took you there?
Well, I tell you what, my friends and I all decided to drink tequila. Now, I wasn't a drinker, but I thought, what the fuck? So I got shit-faced, and we all said, let's quit our jobs. Let's quit our jobs tomorrow. I said, yeah. I was working at an Oriental grocery. It took me 3 raises to get to minimum wage. I was unloading a seafood truck for this guy, Moon O, and it was just, I loved the family that ran this little Oriental grocery, but it was hell. And so the next day I said, I think I even was so wormy, I left a note. And I said, I'm leaving. I quit. Goodbye. Sayonara. And my ex, she wanted to move to New York, and that sounded good to me. And I forgot the punchline of that story. So I quit my job, and then I called my friends up and I said, did you quit your job? I quit my job. And they said, fuck no. Are you out of your fucking mind? I'm at work. I have a hangover. Goodbye. So, yeah. But so that got me to New York, and I thought I've always been creative. I've just done creative things for whatever reason. And I thought I'd work in the film business, and my aunt there got me a job working at a commercial editing house, funnily enough, where Yoko Ono edited the Walking on Thin Ice video. And we got to be pals a little bit because the rest of the guys were in these silk shirts that have pictures of James Dean and handlebar mustaches.
Well, James Dean came from Indiana as well, didn't he? He came from the Hoosier
Well,
State.
yes, there,
and he went to
Indiana
New York.
connection.
Yeah.
Yes, right.
You're the reincarnation of James Dean.
Yeah, right. But so, yes, I moved there. I started working in the film business. That led me to hanging out on 42nd Street with this unbelievable character, Bill Landis. We wrote about 42nd Street, and that fell apart. I remember one morning I came to, and there was a copy of Lou Reed's The Blue Mask. Is that it?
Yeah, The Blue Mask.
Yep. Yeah, a great record. And there was just spurts of blood across the cover. And I thought, if I don't get the fuck out of here, I'm going to be an obituary. And I thought, and I started writing for Sleazoid. And I thought, I want to write on my own. Who do I want to write about? I want to write about people who have meant a lot to me. And the first one was Gary Stewart. And that begat a crazy writing career.
Your first piece, as I understand it, was for Sleazoid Express, the aforementioned.
Yeah, right.
And your first Village Voice piece was about Gary Stewart. But we'll come back to Gary, as I said earlier. But how did you How did you get the commission that led to the 1989 voice piece, Fucking Up with Neil Young?
Okay. There was a guy there at Warner Brothers Reprise, Bill Bentley. Fantastic guy. Been a pal of mine my whole life. And I'd done pieces on Gary. I'd done Jimmy Scott, Hubert Selby, I think. I'd done these different profiles. And Bill said, who do you want to write about? Anybody on the label. You name them. I don't care who it is. I said, well, there's one guy. You ain't going to want to hear who it is, though. And he said, who? Neil Young. Long pause. Long pause. At any rate, 9 months later, I was sitting in a motel waiting for Mr. Young, and that begat this interview, which turned into Shakey.
Well, you rightly berated Neil in that interview for his 80s music, which was like a dog's dinner of different styles and genres, wasn't it? But with typical Neil perversity, he then lets you write his biography, he then after I don't know how many years, when it's about to come out, he tries to stop its publication, and you have to sue him for almost $2 million. I mean, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on Neil, but how do you look back, Jimmy, on your Neil Young experience after all these years?
Well, it's like you have a big tumor on your balls, right? And so you got like 3 balls, and it really hurts just to sit down or stand up. You go to the gym, people are like, who's that guy with the 3 balls? But luckily you find the right surgeon, and then they tell you it's a Canadian tumor. Now, I don't know about you guys, but tumors are bad enough. Canadian tumors it's like a death sentence. But I found the right doctor, and they removed the tumor. You know, there's so many, what do you call them, feelings around this subject. I could bore you for days on end. I once wrote a thing after the book came out about the whole epic tale of writing the book called Chasing Shakey. And my lawyer, George Hedges, may he rest in peace, who got the book published and never took a dime from me. I don't know why. He believed in the book. He believed in me. He turned white when he saw this thing I wrote. And he said, Jimmy, I already got the book published. Bury this in Davy Jones' locker. Don't bring it up again. So, you know, I mean, the characters involved, you gotta wear garlic around your neck and carry a cross when you deal with Mr. Young's team, or at least at that time. And that whole end of it was miserable. I remember delivering the book. I went to the Train Barn. I should preface this. David Briggs, the late, great David Briggs, who was a mentor of mine and a fabulous individual.
And a great character in the book, a key character in the book.
Oh, man. Yeah, I love this. I think about him often. The guy was something else. But Neil, he just had a big fight with Neil over, I think, the synthetic background vocals, which are on Weld. And he said, fuck you, Neil, and drove away, leaving a spray of rocks in Neil's direction. And Neil, of course, said to me, yeah, Jimmy, now you should interview Briggs now that he hates my guts. Well, I took Neil at his word. David didn't want to talk to me because he knew he was going to unleash. But I dogged him and we talked. And during the course of that incredible interview, most of which is in the book, he said, yeah, Jimmy, who knows what'll fuck up next? Probably your book. And a little light bulb went off over Jimmy's head saying, that's exactly what he's going to do. I know it in my heart. I know it. So anyway, I delivered the book to him. It was in a Kmart bag. We were at the Train Barn, this gloomy place that was very special to Neil, that had all of his model trains and everything. And I said, well, Neil, here's the book. And he just gave it that sort of sideways half-second stare. And he goes, yeah, okay. Just put it over there in the corner there. And I can't tell. Guys, I just have to tell you, I knew my goose was cooked. I knew it. And I actually pulled over on the side of the road coming back from the ranch and vomited profusely because my gut told me what I was in for. Now, but none of this is a surprise because, Neil is sort of like, what's that story, the frog and the scorpion? The frog wants a ride across the lake. The scorpion says, I'll give you a ride. Don't worry. Here we go. And then when they get halfway, the scorpion, sticks his pincer in him and they both go down in the drink. And the frog's like, hey, buddy, why did you do that? He goes, it's my nature. And I just think with Neil, it was his nature to throw a wrench in the damn thing. Yeah. He didn't really want the book. I was just a momentary amusement, like his personal Shakey Green. He could take out of a box on the ranch. I could amuse him for a while. He could put me back in the box. And I think he thought that would go on forever, like it does with some of the denizens in his life. But I had a book to write, and I was going to hold his feet to the fire on that regard. And it all worked out great. So,
well, I think it is an incredible book, one of the great rock biographies. I absolutely loved it. If there are any listeners out there who have not read Shakey, if you care about Neil Young at all and like any of his music, it's a must read. It's a sensational book. On your Wikipedia page, Jimmy, it says that some reviewers, and I mean, these are in quote marks, decry the inclusion of McDonough's personal experience / reactions, often found in his books, as a sort of biographical treason. I love it, but make the case for your particular kind of modus operandi as a biographer.
Well, Barney, I don't know if I can make the case. All I know is I'm self-taught. I mean, I'm an ape, with a typewriter, and I'm a one-finger typer, to be on top of that. So I just figured out my own way of doing things. And my whole point of these books is I want you to feel the person they're about. I mean, facts are great. I love facts. I collect them by the barrelful. Let's have a facts jamboree. But more equally as important to that is I want you to feel the individual. And when I do these books, the nature, my books are sort of like a living autopsy. They're not for everybody, and usually not for the subject I have come to discover. Fancy that. I mean, you hope they walk away at the end, but it's 50-50. And part of that is I hang around so fucking long. And I love interviewing people. If I could just get hired to interview people, I've said this before, my postal carrier, I could write a book about them. I just find human behavior fascinating. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it's all about the interviews, and I will interview people to death. Well, almost literally in the case of Andy Milligan, this filmmaker, I took care of him as he was dying. And at one point, he just put his hand up and he said, Uncle, no more interviews, Jimmy. You have to turn it off. And believe you me, that was hard for me because, it's like an addiction. But at any rate, this is a long-winded answer, as I am wont to do, to a simple question. Things happen when I'm around these people. I think it's worth reporting on. And it gives it a certain 3D essence I don't think would be there otherwise. So, but it's not like, I mean, some books have it, some books don't. The Al Green one doesn't really have, that's like a Ouija photo, that book. It doesn't have this extra element because no one hangs out with Al Green, even Al Green. So I had to take a different approach. But in the case of Gary, I knew him and his family for 40 years, and all this fascinating stuff happened. And so I feel that's game, the way I do it. And, they're not for everybody. And if you don't like it, you can fuck off. That's the way I look at it anyway.
Is it fair to say that to some extent, it's not a throwback's the wrong word, but the new journalism of the 60s was the first time that writers put themselves in their pieces? As a I have been cursed with the affliction of the word gonzo. I don't relate. I haven't read any of that stuff. I am not gonzo. There's a lot of things I'm not. I'm not a music journalist. I'm not gonzo. Sure.
I consider myself a biographer. And the point I'm trying to make is I am maybe the worst read person you've ever met. My influences were true crime writers like Gordon Byrne and Brian Masters, and to a certain extent, the language you'd find in copies of Variety, and the writer Hubert Selby. Those, yes. And then the rest is just, you're stuck with me. I'll tell you a funny tale. I'll tell you my two favorite reviews. When the Tammy book came out, this old fossil who was the big literary critic at the Washington Post ranted and raved and said, I read this book on a plane. I was praying the plane would go down before I finished it. And I was so hoping that he'd still be working at the Washington Post for Gary, because I wanted to put in the acknowledgments, well, here it is, my last book. I hope it finishes the job, pal. And then my other favorite review was, there was a witness to this. The book got delivered, Shakey got delivered to Lookout Management. That was Neil's
Elliot Roberts,
manager. Yeah, Elliot Roberts. And they were on the second or third floor. I can't remember. Anyway, the book gets delivered. He opens it. He stares at it, flips through a few pages, walks calmly over to the window, and throws it out the window. And I thought, that's the best review of all time. Elliot Roberts has thrown my fucking book out the window. Congratulations to me.
Fantastic.
But I digress, gentlemen. What were we talking about?
Absolutely loving hearing you talk about your process of writing. And it makes me want to ask how your relationship changes during the course of writing a biography about someone. Presumably at the beginning, you're writing it because you have a deep interest in it. How does that shift? Yeah. And does it what becomes of your, Neil notwithstanding, but say Tammy, how do you feel then at the end of these monumental projects where you've interviewed somebody to death? What's your kind of reflection on it now? How do you relate to the subject?
Well, Jasper, it's all different. I'm going through it with this Gary Stewart book because I've known these people 40 years. We're very close. And unleashing that on the world, there was a lot of angst, but we'll get to that. But, I deeply admire, I can't write, after I wrote Shakey, all these book companies were like, who are you going to do? Well, we'll give you a huge advance. Led Zeppelin? And I was like, I think I'll write about Russ Meyer. Career in the toilet, but it's just a mixed bag. I still am full of admiration for all these people. Even Mr. Young, I'd like to wring his fucking neck, and I don't think we'll be going to the old spaghetti factory soon. But he taught me a lot about art. He taught me that in order to make art, you have to change. It's just part of the gig. And you have to do it over a long period of time. And that was a great gift. He gave me that gift.
Well, he didn't treat you any worse than he treated, Stephen Stills, in the middle of that tour. And, Stephen wakes up one morning, there's just a note from Neil saying, like, eat a peach, love, Neil. He just quit the tour. Mid-tour, just disappeared, leaving Stills on his own on the road. I mean, it just, right? I mean, that's how he operates.
Oh, yeah.
And he thinks he has a right to behave like that. I'm a huge Neil Young fan, but I do think he's kind of monstrous in the way he's treated people.
Well, I mean, when the book was done and what happened, I called a very close cohort of his and told him what was happening. And he started to chuckle and he goes, well, Jimmy, he's done to you what he did to the rest of us. Join the party. I had to laugh too.
Exactly.
It's just his nature, said the Scorpion.
Yeah, exactly. Listen, you mentioned Al Green earlier, and I think you compared it to a Ouija photograph. As it happens, we found an old Al Green audio interview knocking around in the RBP vaults. So I'm going to ask Mark to talk us through a couple of clips from it, and then we'll briefly discuss the Reverend Green.
Yeah, it's Amy Linden interviewing him 12th of October 95. He's just released a new album called Your Heart's in Good Hands, which is his first non-gospel record for 15 years.
A terrible record. Sorry.
It is.
He talks. He does look back. He talks about the old High Records backing band, and he also talks about the way Willie Mitchell changed the way he sang. Let's listen to this clip.
But somebody took a chance on me, Willie Mitchell. So many a day and night, late night, we sit up at the piano. He's saying, sing, let's say it together. I'm, so, and he's playing on the piano. So, no, I didn't want to sing like that. I was 20 years old, 19, 20. I says, I'm so in love with you. What happened? He said, no. Come on, let's go again. I said, but that sounds so, He said, but more people will understand what you're saying. Because I wanted to do the Wilson Pickett, the James Brown, the whole number. He said, no. He says, whatever you want to do. And he's played this on the piano, and he says, it's all right with me. Okay? You're like that.
Because you make me feel so brand
Whatever you think of Al Green, that's very enjoyable to listen to.
Oh yeah,
Mark. What else is in there?
Yeah, no, he talks a lot about the relationship between him as a pop singer and him as a gospel singer, singing secular music and gospel, and returning to singing secular music again. Let's listen to this next clip. It's about how he moved from being a soul singer to being a gospel singer.
love and happiness.
What you want to know is, in the meantime, why couldn't you have continued to sing all these songs, love and happiness, take me to the river, call me, sha-la-la, and all that, and still in love with you? When you went into Christianity, the born-again Christian, that's right. So you're in a narrow sense and not knowing that these things is not bad. In fact, it's blessed and it's very good.
There's nothing wrong being in love with someone, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's really going to sing about how he finally understood that he could sing his secular songs in a way which didn't offend his religious sensibility. That basically he's singing about love and whoever you choose to regard as being loved and so on. It's good. He talks. He's been working with the Fine Young Cannibals, which is a slightly strange combination. Been inducted recently into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And yeah, it's an interesting interview. I mean, he's a piece of work, but Aim is very good, wrangling him.
So, Jimmy, Al Green. I mean, we're all massive fans of Al Green, and we don't want to hear that Al Green is, as I think someone put in a review of Soul Survivor, your Al Green biography. We don't want to know about the egomaniacal monster lurking in the shadows of the grooves. And there's another, it's maybe the same reviewer says this book it basically paints a picture of Al as the Trump of soul music. So like, and I didn't know. I mean, I've read Al's own biography, autobiography, and I haven't read Soul Survivor, which I must do. But I was, obviously you have a take on Al, which is pretty anti-hagiographical, to say the least. Is that fair to say?
Oh, yeah. When I went into it, I thought, wow, the Rev, Love and Happiness. This will be a walk in the park, unlike my other monstrosities. Wow, was I wrong?
Okay.
It became very apparent very quickly there was not a lot of love and happiness in this world, and that Al Green was an extremely tortured soul. He wasn't going to help me. Even if I interviewed him, I wasn't going to learn anything. And so I had to get the people around him to talk, which took, I don't know, a year and a half maybe. They were very... they'd been through it with old Al, and I was the last person they wanted to see. But see, I loved these guys that played on the records like I loved Al.
Mm-hmm.
The guys who were that high rhythm section, I could write another 10 volumes about them if somebody, coughed up the $1.98. And his live bands, which were... they were something else. Anyway, I got to be tight with these guys, and they had a story to tell. And, it's funny with some of these books, the figure at the center, they're kind of neutral. They're almost like with this book and Shakey, they're almost like, dare I say it, Warholian figures that themselves are rather muted in a lot of ways. And they pull in these characters and live off them and get inspired from them. And that was certainly the case with Al. But I got to tell you, if there was ever a book I wanted to give back, it was this one. I took no joy in the end product. I think it's one of my best books. It's brutal, but he's endlessly fascinating. No one will ever get to the bottom of that enigma wrapped in a riddle, sitting in front of a church pew. He's definitely tortured by the sacred and the profane.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a mountain of other crazy stuff that isn't in the book. Maybe it will come to light one day. And yet, you listen to him, he's cut a few covers lately, and not unlike Van Morrison, the guy's voice is just, it's unearthly. It's still there. He's still got it. If anybody could wrangle him into making a real, actual record, I think it would be hellacious. But he neither has the discipline, and there's nobody there who could possibly challenge him. So we get these little epiphanies every once in a while, which is great. For my money, I'm a deep soul fanatic. If I could, I'd write 12 volumes on Kip Anderson. But Al was my favorite in that genre, and so I wrote that book.
Yeah, I saw him about 10 years ago at the Albert Hall, and he was astonishingly good. That's a guy who sings every weekend in his church. That's one of the reasons why his voice is in such good nick. He's practiced it. He uses that voice all the time. But I was mortified to read that it was literally a trail of literally bruised women throughout his through his life.
Yeah, I get into that in detail. I had access to the FBI files that no one ever paid attention to. It's weird with some of these figures. A certain myth sets in, and everybody just goes with that, and doesn't really, they're too lazy to look at it from a different angle. But his relationships with women have been rather tortured. It's all in the book.
Right.
what can I say?
Has anyone ever like accused you of sort of being like an Albert Goldman? In other words, kind of, peeling back the curtain on, the truth of their sort of sacred cows and heroes?
They've accused me of many things, Barney, but not that.
Oh, okay.
Bring it on. I would say the difference between he and I is I really love these people. I'm not out to get anybody. Far from it.
Okay.
I have a deep love for the subjects I'm writing about, and that remains intact despite it all. So, but I think I make clear in my books, biography is a messy. I'm not even sure it's a good idea, and I do it. That's why that's going to be my last biography. I still have an autobiography to do, Jack Nietzsche. That's another story.
You have to do that, Jimmy.
Well, hopefully. There's a few obstacles.
Do you know the book by the late Janet Malcolm called The Journalist and the Murderer?
Oh, yeah. I'm a fan of that book.
As you're talking about, maybe biography not being a great idea, I remember there's always a thing in that book that is lodged in my brain. She describes maybe she's just talking about all journalists who kind of get the dirt, and they're like, basically she compares them to like burglars who've broken into your bedroom and stolen your wife's jewelry, and they're running down the street shouting, "Look at this jewelry I found."
Yeah, right. And then there's an element of that's truthful. I can't deny it.
It's uncomfortable.
I'll go through the panty drawer. I'll go through the panty drawer.
Okay, so it'd be panties for you, not jewelry, it'd be panties. Okay.
Well, I'm guilty, Your Honor. But yet, I also try to talk about the sessions these people create in such absurd detail.
Yes.
You want to kill yourself. So the point, if there's a point here to be made, Jimmy, is there? I always lived by the epitaph that Hubert Selby said, "A man obsessed is a man possessed by a demon." That sort of has been the defining mantra of my life, for better or for worse. Is it good? Is it bad? Everyone else will have to be the judge. I'm in it.
You're in it.
I'm going for it, so get out of my way.
Well, listen, before we come on to your obsession with Gary Stewart, which is obviously the main point of this episode, I just wanted to relate this to something you said earlier about the gonzo writers. And I assume by that phrase, you include people like Nick Toshers. And the reason I'm bringing him into this is because we've included a piece by Nick Toshers from 1976, which is a profile of Gary Stewart for Penthouse. And we've also included a long piece about Gary's 1975 debut album by the week's featured writer, John Morthland, who died 10 years ago this month. And I just wanted to give a shout out to John, who is quoted in your Gary Stewart book. Did you, as a matter of interest, read John's 1984 book, The Best of Country Music, from which that piece is taken?
Yeah. I had it as a kid. I remember throwing it against the wall. He irritated me somehow.
Okay.
I was young, full of fire. For the life of me, I can't remember what it is, and it's probably irrelevant. But yes.
It's where I first, so the piece that we're featuring is the first piece I ever read. It was the first awareness I ever had of Gary Stewart, funnily enough. And it prompted me to buy Out of Hand on cassette tape. And when I was driving around the American South with my friend Mia McKean researching what became my first book, we used to play Out of Hand on the car tape deck a lot. So that was my introduction to Gary Stewart, and it was an appropriate place to be listening to Gary. Driving through.
That's fabulous.
Tennessee.
I love hearing that.
Yeah, I wish I still had the tape. But so just a nod to John Morthland. There's a couple of other pieces that we're featuring. But listen, let's get to the point. Tell our listeners, Jimmy, about your honky tonk hero, Gary Stewart, and the obsession with him that comes full circle from your 1988 Village Voice profile of him to the publication of I Am the Honky Tonks. Tell, and listen, there'll be listeners who will never have heard of Gary Stewart. I'm sure.
Right.
So make sell Gary to them in a few nutshells.
All right. There are singers, and then there are singers. There are singers that have such emotion that you want to drive off the road after listening to them. Such is the case with Gary Stewart. He had some incredible honky-tonk hits in the mid-'70s. Out of Hand, Drinking Thing, She's Acting Single, I'm Drinking Double. These were classic Nashville records. Full of the best kind of tension and opera that Nashville could provide. And Gary sang like a man possessed, like his life depended on landing the next note. And even if you're not a country music fan, if you find, say, Jerry Lee Lewis palatable, there's that element of Gary. Like no other figure that I can think of, he ties together a lot of rockabilly, rock and roll, rock, blues, folk, bluegrass. He was born in Kentucky. It all coursed out of his body through his vocal cords. And I've written about many, many people, big shots, small time losers. Gary stayed in my brain and my heart deeper than all of them. His music moved me in a way that's hard to describe. It's a hard book for me to talk about this book. I get emotional. And that is Gary. If you're a fan of music, if you're a fan of emotion in music, if you're a fan of country music, check this guy out. He'll put your hair in curlers.
I mean, I finished the book literally a couple of days ago. It's not quite as long as Shakey, but it's still a very long book, and it's grimly addictive, I would say, as well as full of love, obviously, for his music. It culminates in a kind of OxyContin nightmare. Is it your hope that it will kind of in some way raise Gary to the cult status of, I don't know, like a Graham Parsons, for example? I'm not comparing the two, although there are parallels.
Right.
But is that, would that make you happy if in 5 years people were talking about Gary in the way a lot of people talk about Graham, for example?
Oh, hell yes. Yeah, that's part of the point of the book. I mean, that's why I write in such mind-numbingly detail about all these outtakes that no one's ever heard, because I am making the case for this guy being a great artist that goes way beyond the sliver that has been previously out there. And I would like nothing better. I mean, if Hall of Fames matter, he should be in one. He should be in the Country Music Hall of Fame. He's influenced a lot of people. And I think his daughter, Shannon, without whom this book would not exist, and I are on a quest to get all that stuff out of there and get Gary the due he deserves. Nothing would make me happier. And you know how it is, Barney. You write these books, and then 9 months later, the two nerds down at the record store are schooling you on what the best Gary Stewart is because they're now the expert. I mean, that's just the way the fucking world works. You know what I mean? The book goes out. It's your little child that goes out in the world. People absorb it, and then it just has a life of its own. And I dearly want it to have that kind of life where mojo nerds are arguing about your place or mine versus Out of Hand. I would love that. That would warm the cockles of my black heart, Barney.
Well, let's try and put Gary in some sort of context, especially for any listeners who know nothing about him whatsoever and never heard him.
Yeah.
I mean, he was, in my eyes, he was like hardcore country in a way that, say, Graham Parsons wasn't. I think you really do have to love country music to embrace Gary Stewart. And I'm not trying to put anyone off, but I do think. But so, I mean, it's interesting. He played with Charlie Pride. He was signed to RCA Records when that was kind of in terms of Nashville, like probably the leading sort of country label in Nashville. And he worked with most of the great Nashville session men of the 70s and the 80s, including the other David Briggs. Footnote there. You like footnotes, Jimmy, I know. Yes. But at the same time, and your book is just so brilliant on all this, I mean, he was besotted by the Allman Brothers. And in some ways, he seemed to do everything in his power not to succeed as a mainstream country star. I mean, is that a fair way to put it? I mean, how do you square that circle?
Yeah, absolutely.
From Charlie Pride to Dickie Betts. I mean, explain.
Yeah. Well, Gary's, and you can't really explain him. He's a loose thread, to say the least. But he really fell into the country music end of it. That was never his driving force. And it was really sort of by accident that he made these records. Did he excel at them? Oh, you better believe it. I mean, somebody like Bob Dylan, obsessed with 10 years of this, played it over and over. That's a pretty good fan to have, I'd say. So it was just one facet of him, and yet, he became a country star, quote unquote. Yeah, but at the same time, he was utterly self-destructive, and he just didn't give a shit about fame. Barney, I know you've interviewed people where they say, "Oh, I don't care about fame. I don't want to be on my album covers." Blah blah blah. These are the same people that at 4 a.m. are yelling at their manager, "Why aren't I in the lead review in Rolling Stone?"
Yeah.
Not Gary. He couldn't have given a shit. He couldn't have given a shit that I wanted to write about him. He resisted it. In fact, I had to, elbow my way into his trailer because I had a record he wanted. That was the only way I was going to get in there. I had music he coveted. So he was this odd mix. And RCA at the time was just the squarest label. I mean, go back and look at the album covers. It's almost awe-inspiring how cubic zirconia these album covers are. They're some of my favorites. Cold Hard Facts of Life, Porter Wagner. Check the album cover out. You'll be amazed. And so he's in this very square world, a great world, but square, and yet he is this wild force that can't be contained. It was inevitable. It was going to implode, explode, and I wish it had lasted a little longer than it did, but that's Gary. All he cared about was making music, truly.
Every day I tell myself it's temporary, but it's only 'cause she's young that makes her want.
I'm just going to give our listeners a kind of taste of the book. Why not just start right at the beginning? This is the introduction, which is entitled...
It's electrifying.
Trailer with Blacked Out Windows is the title of the introduction. And then there's a little epigraph, a quote from Tanya Tucker, who was a great fan of and friend to Gary. "Man, ain't nobody could ever sing honky-tonk music like Gary Stewart. One of the greatest country singers of all time. The king of honky-tonk music. There was nobody better." And then you start, Gary, put us right in the trailer. "Gary Stewart, king of the honky-tonks, has just thrown a knife at my head. A mere steak knife, big deal. Thwap! It hits the double-wide paneling behind me and falls to the carpet as the clattering air conditioner struggles against the Florida heat. My chuckle only makes him angrier. I'm giving Stewart shit about hiding from the world in his trailer, and it's pissing him off." I mean, I'll leave it there. It's sort of it's catnip, isn't it? Really. I mean, let me ask you this: why are so many of us so entranced by so self-destructive country singers, from Hank Williams to George Jones on down, and then this sort of second part to that question: was it as if Gary had to live? He had to live the honky-tonk life that he was writing about in some way.
Well, this is a question I've spent my life answering. I don't know. I don't know. It just seems like it's so hard to talk about this stuff without getting into Clichéville,
Mm-hmm.
But the people I like tend to be flawed individuals, like we all are, and their talent runs extra deep, and the maybe the self-destructive impulses run extra deep. It's in my experience, it's gone hand in hand with the people I've been drawn to. Why that is, I can't say. I don't know. Gary came from Kentucky, and there were dark shadows in his family that had nothing to do with the rock and roll or country lifestyle. There was an element, there was an air of doom.
Yeah.
And but the other thing is, we all have these impulses in us. I mean, that's why I think people relate.
Yes.
We have the capacity. I don't know about you. I was driving to the gym the other day, and I thought, wow, what would that curve right there? If I went off that curve, would I die or just merely break my neck? And there's that impulse, like, maybe I'll do that today. Thankfully, I didn't do that because I'm here with you wonderful people today. But we all have that, or a lot of us, I guess, maybe, I don't know. We recognize the human behavior, and it makes it compelling. And you want to see, is this person going to get out of the Rubik's Cube alive or not? Will I? I mean, I empathized with Gary about a lot of stuff. I think that's part of why I could tell the tale, But these are questions I ponder, and I want people to ponder them after they finish the book. Certainly.
Yeah, well, I really do recommend it. I mean, it's a hair-raising read. It made me grateful that my own kind of drug dabblings and sort of dances with the devil didn't take me a lot deeper into the mire, I have to say, because it's awful stuff. I mean, it really is just the drugs themselves and what they caused. I mean, not just Gary. I mean, there's so many characters, as with the Neil Young book, Jimmy. There's so many extraordinary characters that you've talked to that are part of the drama, and it's just like it's pretty fucked up stuff. Let's be frank about it. I had my last question. Yeah, well, I mean, at the end, you say something about interviewing all the sort of surviving Stewarts. And if get you right, they all come to the house where Gary killed himself. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So they all come. I don't know if they come in groups or they come one at a time. But it's you pretty much talk to anyone who was related to Gary, and there were a lot of them, right? And there were tragedies left, right, and center. Right? I suppose my question at the book is that you finally got to hold this thing in your hands, and just huge congratulations on that. How do you anticipate the family's reception of the book?
Well, I lost a lot of sleep about that because I love his family. Shannon and I are thick as thieves. I worried about it. I can't tell you, but I'll tell you my favorite review. Shannon, who told me, confessed, I've never read an entire book in my life, but I'm reading this one.
Yeah.
She read the book. She called me and she goes, Jimmy, I just want you to know I've read the book and I love you anyway. And I burst out into laughter. I thought that was the greatest review of all time. I wish it were on the back cover.
You can put it on the paperback.
Yeah, right. I think some of the Stewarts are waiting for the audio book, which I read. For one time, they finally let me read the book. Thank you to Chris the Champion Campion, without whom this book would not exist. But so far, I mean, I have been surprised at how moved the people within the covers have been. There's been one veiled death threat. I don't really want to get into that.
I figured there might be a veiled death threat.
Yeah. But I'm ambulatory and the book exists, so win-win for me, pal.
Right. Yeah. I mean, look, I think, obviously, if you were writing about me in the context of Gary Stewart's life, I might take umbrage. But the fact is, there's so much love. Every page is infused with your love for him and for Mary Lou, his wife, and his kids, and many others as well. I mean, there's some pretty evil sons of bitches in there, but hopefully they're gone, long gone. I don't know. But anyway, look, I mean, I love the book. I would urge anyone, even if you haven't heard of Gary Stewart, I'd urge you to buy. And obviously, if you haven't read, Shakey, the Neil Young book, and Russ Meyer for that matter. I interviewed Russ Meyer once. I have such good memories.
Experience, Barney?
I loved him. It was. I think about 1982. He was very, very cheerful and friendly man. I liked him a lot. But anyway, we're not here to talk about what is the title of that book? Big Bosoms and Square Jaws.
Big Bosoms and Square Jaws.
Irresistible. So go and buy that one as well, folks.
I've seen men look at her before and they think I don't see.
Listen, thank you so much for talking us through all of that. We could have done a 4-hour episode. We just wanted to pay our respects to Country Joe McDonald, really just in the form of a rather kind of wonderful little clip from the audio interview we have on RBP. So Jasper, if you would just kindly, we just thought it was timely and apposite. So can we hear it?
When you talked about Nixon committing suicide, was that a joke? Or do you think there are any hopeful signs in that direction?
Well, I think that, he's like such an egomaniac that he worked so hard to become the president, and I worked his entire life working towards that goal. He missed it several times, and he finally got it, and he was convinced that he was going to become a president that would go down in the history books at least as being a good president, if not a great president, and now he's going down as being one of the dumbest presidents that we ever had.
Well, yeah, I can't imagine anyone will work out why we played that clip. But
actually, I guess is this the point where I start get some quotes to you guys, because the first one is actually John Morthland, our featured writer. His first writing gig was in 1967, writing for the San Bernardino County Sun. And he reviews the Monterey Fest, and he says, it's always fun to watch Country Joe and the Fish perform, because the group is obviously having so much fun itself. The stage personality of lead guitarist Barry Melton is one that cannot be denied. The group is ready to go national now, since it emerged from the Berkeley Underground last month with the hit single Not So Sweet Martha Lorraine. I'm not even sure he got that title right. So there we go. That's funny.
I mean, Mark, I'm kind of, I don't know why, I'm going to assume Jimmy is not a rabid Country Joe and the Fish fan. Nod if I'm correct.
There's a thumbs up. He's looking away and thumbing up.
I just intuited that. So you can sit this one out for 5 seconds, Jimmy.
I'm fascinated. Go on.
I also suspect that he's not a fan of Three Dog Night. Vicky Wickham interviewing Danny Huffner for Hit Parade in 1971. He said, we'd like to take Randy Newman, of course, wrote Mama Told Me Not to Come, which is a big hit for them. We'd like to take Randy Newman on the road with us, but we feel it would do him more harm than good. There's too much of America that's just not ready for him, hunched over his piano with his strange voice. I suspect he's right.
Don't tell us you're not a Randy Newman fan, Jimmy, because that would break my heart.
Oh, no.
Okay,
no.
good. Okay,
I like
good.
That
great.
song,
all right.
Let Me Go. You know that song, Let Me Go?
Yes.
That's a beautiful song.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Good. Great.
Right.
Excellent.
Is it Pete Makovsky or Pete Makowski?
Pete Makowski. Right,
writing for the Sounds in 1974, interviewing Uriah Heep's Gary Thane. Now, Gary Thane was there was a succession of electrocutions on stage. Les Harvey, of course, died. The Stoner Crows guitar player died about a year before. And Gary Thane had been electrocuted on stage. He says, all I remember was going to the amplifier to adjust the equalizers so I could get more treble on my bass. The next thing that happened was I blacked out. Apparently, I shot 4 feet into the air and landed on my face. Dave Byron immediately realized that I was electrocuted, and he rushed over and he pulled the bass out of my hands. At first, he thought I was dead because I wasn't breathing and I was lying there as stiff as a board. I was taken to the dressing room. I was in another world. I was telling Dave to take the handcuffs off me, and I even kicked my personal roadie in the face. So that's what it's like to be electrocuted.
Well, I know how
stage.
much you love Uriah Heep, Mark.
God, the most horrible band on earth.
I mean the Dickens character, obviously, not the awful British rock group.
And lastly, and this is very apropos of our entire podcast today, Tammy Wynette being interviewed by Roy Carr for the New Musical Express in 1975, 1 month after her divorce from George Jones had gone through.
Good timing.
Obviously, they'd been separated for a little bit longer than that, but nonetheless, this is... And she is really sore about the whole thing. She says, it became quite impossible for us to lead a normal domestic life when we were off the road. Everyone thought we should be the king and queen of country music, wild swinging socialites. Well, all I really wanted to do was to play house with George and the girls. And then she says, I wish George and I hadn't divorced. I really don't like being single. I'm just not used to it. Except for 2 months, I've been married for 15 years. I'm desperately trying to adjust to it, but I don't like it. Success doesn't compensate in any way for what I'm going through, though I've never put my career before my family. They've always been the most important thing in all my life. I don't think I'll ever get married again. She was in pain when this interview took place. No doubt about it.
Your thoughts on that, Jimmy? As the author of Tragic Country Queen, the biography of Tammy Wynette.
I just think poor Tammy, she never really... She never really got the peace of mind she deserved. And, a lot of it was in her turmoil. She was driven by forces beyond her control. You just wish, I just thought Tammy was a hellacious singer. She was like country's Billie Holiday, for a feeble analogy.
No, but I get what you're saying. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And you just wished she had a better end. She had such a big heart.
Yeah.
But, human behavior got in the way, as it does with so many of us. R.I.P. Tammy, you were the best.
Yeah, the last thing she says is, George is still the only man I know who can make me cry when he sings, and 5 minutes later can make me so mad I want to kill him.
Yeah, that's Jones. I mean, I'll tell you a funny story. When I was writing the Tammy book, I was asking him about Doodle the Duck. For the uninitiated, George had several alter egos when he was whacked out of his skull, and one of them was Doodle the Duck, and and another one was the Old Man. I mean, it got very rococo, these alter egos, and he would talk to everybody in the duck voice, and he wouldn't stop. And I mean, when I asked other people about it, they didn't even want to talk about it. They were so traumatized by the Doodle the Duck. So anyway, I'm sitting there in George's very well-appointed rumpus room, and I start to ask him about the Doodle the Duck. He stood up in the living room and sang a verse of "He stopped loving me, he stopped loving her today" in the voice of the Doodle the Duck, and I just thought, wow, man, I can die and go to the great beyond now. I've heard George Jones sing "He Stopped Loving Her Today" and as a duck.
It's great.
It was fabulous.
I worked with a bass player a long time ago who was part of the Nashville sort of A team, a guy called Bob Ray, and he got booked to do a George Jones album where the whole band would turn up at the studio every morning, sign their union forms, and then go home because George never showed up for 2 months. They were paid top dollar.
Yeah. I've been obsessed with Jones my whole life. I have everything he ever cut.
Yeah,
I mean, in terms of a singer,
I mean, the greatest voice.
We're gonna hold on. We're gonna hold on.
Jasper, what have you got?
I've got two things. First of which is a very recent thing indeed, and they're both very recent. But the first I want to mention is one by our very own William Pike, his interview with Youngblood's manager, Thomas Arnby, which is a very entertaining piece because Thomas Arnby is a manager in the Spinal Tap vein. There are more than a few moments, William writes, where Thomas manifests the industry sage. We're living in a world where everyone is being told that success is instant, and I think it's not. You've got to fail many times to win a few times. For Thomas and Dominic being Youngblood's real name, the aim of the game is, quote, to bring rock and roll music into its rightful place within popular culture. Are they engaging in challenges that are impossible to overcome? Asks William. I'm a music manager, says Thomas. I eat challenges for breakfast. It's literally what I do, and there's so many of them all the time.
Bring me another
Christ.
plate of challenges. That one was so delicious. Jimmy, you probably don't know who this Youngblood character is, and you probably don't need to know.
I know who he is.
Okay, great, excellent. Well, okay.
Grandpa keeps up to some degree here in the basement.
What's your other young thrusting piece, Jasper?
My other piece is Martin Aston writing in Mojo September last year, reviewing an album called Now Would Be a Good Time by Folk Bitch Trio, an Australian trio whom I saw just last night.
I remember.
At Scala here in London. And I just had, I wanted to find a piece about them because I had such a wonderful time at the gig. It's a fairly short album review, but he describes them as being the Australian Roaches or Haim or both. Heidi Peverell, Jeannie Pilkington and Gracie Sinclair's choice of band name promises a more blooded counterpoint to the earnest folk harmony singing archetype. Friends since high school, they sound more like sisters, more than a match for the Roaches and McGarrigles. But lacing FBT's vintage glow is millennial generation candor with plenty of sex and debilitating breakups. And they are just brilliant. I mean, last night, they were so wonderful. They have these incredible, I don't know if any of you have listened to them, but their harmonies, they sing these very, very tight, and I think one does bring to mind the McGarrigle sisters and just that, we've talked about this before, but that thing that happens when people that know each other really well sing close harmonies. It's very special. And they had an amazing presence. I mean, they're a relatively young band. I mean, they've been a band since 2020, but last year is when they released their first album. And I was just deeply moved last night, and it was a wonderful experience. They were so kind of on it, and just that close harmony, I just think is something that's very, very special. And so I'm really looking forward to whatever they do next. And I would highly recommend seeking them out live because it was just on point, and the crowd were great. There was very little phone use. There was very little talking. Everyone was just caught in this spell of these three singers working absolutely in tune. It was just great.
Super. Oh, thanks for sharing that. Yeah. We'll have to go. So I remember when Joe Boyd came on the podcast, we were talking about family harmonies, weren't we? Well, look, I mean, that does bring us to the end of episode 224 of the Rock's Back Pages podcast. Many thanks to Jimmy McDonough for joining us and being so entertaining today. It's been absolutely fabulous hosting you. Do pre-order Jimmy's riveting biography of country singer Gary Stewart, I Am from the Honky Tonks, published later this month by Wolf and Salmon. Do also follow our podcast on whichever platforms you use, and please consider subscribing to Rock's Back Pages itself. Check to see if your local library or academic institution subscribes, and we will be back in a fortnight to talk to the wonderful Adele Berthet about her new book, No New York. So it's farewell from us, and it's farewell from our guest, Jimmy McDonough. And so it's farewell from us, and it's farewell from our guest, Jimmy McDonough. So all together now in Street Corner Harmony, goodbye.
That concludes episode 224 of the Rock's Back Pages podcast. Many thanks to special guest Jimmy McDonough. Gary Stewart, I Am from the Honky Tonks, is published by Wolf and Salmon and available for pre-order now. Those are Bonnie Hoskins and Mark Pringle, and it was co-hosted and produced by Jasper Murison Bowie. The Rocks Back Pages podcast is part of the Pantheon Podcast Network. You can find thousands of articles, as well as hundreds of full-length audio interviews at rocksbackpages.com.
I don't want to be your friend.